What's up everybody, Justin here, and welcome to today's video on career advice for athletes. Now if you're a current athlete, you might be telling yourself, oh, this isn't important. I don't need to know any of this. And that's fine. You can think that way. But if you do think that way, you'd be setting yourself up for a lot of failure. Now, if you were to watch my first video, which I'll link down below, it really focuses on the one thing that a majority of athletes don't do, and that is focus on life outside of sports. Now, it's not necessarily your fault that you don't focus on things outside of sports. It's actually due to the culture of athletics. For example, the NCAA, especially the big-time Power 5 schools and colleges, will really demonize you and make you feel bad if you pursue things outside of just the sport. Why? Because you're not making the school money, you're not helping the team, and therefore you're automatically criticized. Now, since it's not your fault, it's actually your responsibility to come up from that situation and to put yourself in a better position for life outside of sports. And that's why I can't wait to get started on what we're going to talk about today. Now, as I mentioned, the NCAA, they actually don't care what you really do outside of sports. For example, many of the schools that you go to or decide to go to, they don't really care what major you go in. And in reality, they want you to choose the easiest majors so you spend more time on things related to the team and the sport. Colleges have been known what it's called to do as clustering, which is they'll throw a bunch of their student athletes in one major and say, go all take these majors because that's the easiest thing.
Or the easiest major to take.
Schools like University of North Carolina has been accused of just putting students in fake classes just so they can get a passing grade. This is truly the culture around athletics, and they don't really care about anything you do outside of sports. That is why it is your responsibility to really make something out of nothing and to really prepare yourself for life outside of sports. That's why I'm so passionate about this topic, because I can't wait to help you on career advice for athletes starting now. The biggest thing it comes to in terms of career advice for athletes is that majority of athletes aren't prepared the minute the ball stops bouncing or the minute they stop running. A lot of times athletes or former athletes will experience professional, social, and even skill deficits because they never learned these things in college. And now they're really stepping into the real world and they don't know what to expect. That's why it's time for us to close that gap and that bridge and to really allow all athletes to succeed away from the field. Oftentimes, as an athlete, you feel this pressure on you to succeed, and especially in your sport. That's because people in your hometown, your friends, your neighbors, your family, and even your parents, they really are relying on you to become a professional athlete. Now, if you were to watch my first video, you would get the key statistic that shows that only 2% of college athletes make it professional. The rest of the 98% are not prepared on what to do with their life. That's why it's so critical and so important
For you to start thinking about these things early,
because that's what's really going to allow you to step into the real world and be prepared for what's coming at you. Now, athletes will always have these key skills. That's the ability to get up early, the ability to work on a team, and the ability to keep on pushing. These things will translate later in life, and it's so important for you to keep those things and that mindset as you pursue a career outside of sports. Why is this important? As I mentioned earlier in the video, many athletes regret and ultimately aren't prepared for life outside of sports. Let me give you an example on how athletes are already fit for the workforce. They're just not trained and prepared when they step into the workforce. Here's the example. A LinkedIn study conducted in 2018 said that the biggest gap in the workforce is soft skills. What are soft skills? Communication, ability to treat others with respect, ability to work on a team with others. These things are the biggest gap in the workforce. What do all athletes have? Athletes have soft skills. 95% of Fortune 500 CEOs played a sport. And the ones that are women, over half of them played a sport in college. So not only as an athlete are you capable of being a leader, you ultimately have the skills that are already in you. You just need someone that allows you
to carry those out.
And that's why we're so focused on career advice for athletes, and especially today on what we're going to talk about and get done. There are 5 things that is really going to help athletes. And the first one is understanding your why. Now, knowing your why doesn't have to be right now, but it's ultimately up to you to find things that drive your passions, will make you get up in the morning, and will really continue to push you to succeed. I just want you to know that athletes are valued. Your ability to work on a team, your ability to have confidence in the work that you do, and your ability to keep on pushing is ultimately successful in anything you do outside of sports just as much as it is in your sport. Now, understand your why refers back to things that you want to do away from the field. It's even okay to do things in your sport and in your field.
As long as that's something that really drives you.
And that can really be a career outside of college or outside of when you're done playing.
These are questions that you have to ask yourself.
But it's really important for you in your career to understand your passions and really what is going to make you happy. You played this sport because you love this sport or you like this sport. And that has to apply in anything else you do in life. Because if you don't, you're not going to get very far. And you're going to be miserable, frustrated, and ultimately regret on anything that you do outside of sports. I don't want to pressure you as an athlete on finding your passions today. But the earlier, the better, because these are going to drive a lot of decisions in the future. For example, you might take a class on a certain topic or subject that you're interested in, and then maybe you build on that passion. Another great thing to do would be to talk to former athletes around your hometown, around your college, those that really have been in your shoes and are in a career that you might think that is extremely helpful or something that you find passionate about or really interested in. Having that key perspective is really important and will ultimately get you to understand your why. Now, I want you to remember as an athlete that everything you do is with a purpose, regardless if it's on the field or off the field. The same thing applies to your career. Now, it's up to you to really understand your why, and that will put you in position for a successful career. Number 2 on my list of career advice for athletes. Now, this one might arguably be the most important one out of all 5, and that's network. Networking is extremely important to your success, not only on the field, but away from the field. Now, what is networking? Well, the first thing I want you to know about networking is that relationships matter. They are extremely important, and it's up to you to really build that relationship with someone and not just to take advantage of them. Now, the saying always goes, it's not who you know, it's who knows you. And that ultimately is going to carry you very far in your career, regardless of what field you choose. Now, networking is kind of like recruiting in a sense. Recruiting is the coaches build a relationship with your family. The same thing goes with networking. It takes time to build a relationship with a stranger, with a former athlete, with an alum, with a friend. These things take time. But if you really put your mind into it and are genuinely invested about building a network with someone and having a good relationship with someone, these things are extremely important in your career. Now, for all my college athletes out there, networking is what's going to allow you to put yourself in competition with those students that are applying to the same internships and the same jobs, and they have even more time than you do because they don't have to worry about practice. Why is networking so important? Networking is so important because the competition of the workforce, regardless of the field you choose, the major you choose, or what you want to do, is fierce. Networking allows you to close a bridge and close a gap that puts you right next to the student that you might have class with. But this allows you to actually build a relationship, and then in the long run, you're going to benefit from it. How many students are going to have the ability to say former student athlete? Or how many students are going to have the option to reach out to former student athletes and really build a network and build a relationship with them to leverage for a career? That's right, they don't. That's why it's up to you to, what I like to say, leverage your clout as a student athlete to really build those relationships with people that other students might not be able to. This is what networking does. It closes a gap, it builds a relationship, and it will put you in position to succeed for a career after sports. Now, as an athlete, within networking, you might actually be able to reach out to former alumni at your school that weren't even an athlete. A lot of alumni keep tabs on their school and their sports. So when you come to them and say, how was your time as a student? That's something that you can start and build a relationship with and really build that network. Now, that might be a future video on how to reach out to alumni and how to build that relationship. But ultimately know that you have so many opportunities to build relationships and build a network with people from your school, outside of your school, in your sport, and even outside of your sport. All these things are critical because networking is really what drives a career. It's the opportunity to speak with someone, opportunity to get to know someone, and the opportunity to put yourself in position to succeed. When it comes to networking, you have to remember a couple of things. Now, you might think that you don't provide a lot of value for someone, but providing value doesn't just have to be in what you provide. It can be the way you listen. It can be giving advice on certain things. That's value for someone that might not think that they need it, but ultimately will benefit from it. Networking has really important components. And one thing to always remember is that it has to be mutually beneficial. So at first, when you reach out to someone, it might not seem mutually beneficial for that person, but you have to frame it in a way that it puts it in perspective for them to say, oh, this is actually not only going to help me, but I get to help them. A great resource to do that is LinkedIn. Now, if you don't know what LinkedIn is, it's a social media app, just like Instagram, just like Snapchat, and even like TikTok, because it allows you to follow people, get to know someone, but ultimately it's more of a professional social site. You can be any age to start one, but I'd recommend you be at least in high school. But this will really allow you to put yourself out there and get to know people and get to reach out to people, because that's ultimately what building a network is about. Now, lastly, the biggest thing in your network I'd recommend you to do is to find a mentor. A mentor is extremely important, not only to your development, because a mentor really prides on having you succeed. A mentor can be extremely beneficial for you because most oftentimes they're not. They know what mistakes that they've made and they're able to tell those to you so you don't make those same mistakes. A mentor is someone that you're able to go to for advice. And that's why finding a mentor is so important to your career, because not only are they able to give you the truth when you need it, but they've also been in positions that you haven't. So they're able to leverage their own network and their own abilities and their own past experiences to make sure that you benefit in the end. And that's what is so great about finding a mentor. Now, my third tip is utilizing resources. It can be on campus as a college athlete. It can be your counselors and advisors as a high school athlete, or even as a professional. It could be leveraging your agency to really find things that will benefit you away from the sport. Now, for my college athletes, a lot of schools have a career center. You might have never stepped foot in one, and that's okay. But ultimately know that your school has resources that allows you to succeed and prepare yourself. It's just up to you to take advantage of them. Now, a lot of schools, the big Power 5 schools, even have transition resources for student athletes to prepare for life outside of sports. However, there's not many schools that actually prepare you for that, and that's why it's so important for you to take the responsibility on leveraging your resources, whether it's on campus, whether it's your advisors, whether it's your teachers, to really prepare yourself for life outside of sports. Now, all of these things with resources require you to make the extra effort, but it's well worth it. Let me give you an example. I went to my career fair as a freshman. Freshman year, I stepped in the career fair, suit and tie, with the resume in hand, ready to talk to employers. Now, that required me to make the extra effort to go out there, put myself outside of my comfort zone, and step outside the boundaries to understand, to learn, and know what the process is really like outside of athletics. Now, you may not be in the position to do that, and that's fine, but there are still things that you're able to do to put yourself out there and really put yourself in a position to succeed. Now, all of these things take a lot of time, and if you don't have that time, I get it, but you still have to stop making excuses for the little bit amount of time that you're able to put towards something that's actually important. So let's say that you don't have time to go to your career center, and that's fine. But here are some things that you can do to still come out successful and still be prepared, let's say, to have a resume by the time you're done with the whole process. I would email that person or that center and say, I would like to build a resume for myself, but I don't really have the experience. Or I would like to build a resume for a career fair, or to actually just prepare me for life outside of sports. How can I get started? But be sure to mention that you're not able to go in because you're so conflicted with things, and that's fine, because most career centers are actually set up to help you. Now, as an athlete, we may not have a lot of time to build up that work experience, and that is fine, and that's okay. But this work experience could be anything from volunteer experience, could be anything from basketball camps, soccer camps, anything that allows you to show that your skills are just not only in sports, but also translatable and transferable to things outside of sports. Now, the second thing to do is actually to send the email. It might actually be hard for you because you might be nervous or you might not know what to expect, but the only thing you can do is try and really just put your foot down and do it, because at the end of the day, if you don't do it, no one else is going to do it for you. So second, send that email out prepared with your work experiences in hand for an email reply. The third thing, that person or organization or center might ask you to come in and meet with them. But if you're not able to, make sure that you're able to schedule at least a phone call or a virtual meeting to go over some things that are really important for helping you build out your portfolio. The fourth one is where the magic happens. They might send you a format that allows you to plug in certain things, or they might ask for that work experience that I mentioned as the very first thing. And now you're prepared because they're gonna actually help you build one, or you're gonna have a template and a recipe for success for you to just do it yourself. And the fifth one, in terms of career, a lot of the career centers at schools Work with employers across all fields and all majors that are going to allow you to get your foot in the door. I would ask your career center for employers that are hiring, for employers that actively hire students from your school, and to ultimately try to make a connection with someone. Those career centers have connections with a lot of recruiters and a lot of people in that industry. And if you're able just to ask the career center
to really
put yourself in a position to succeed and build out something that wasn't there prior. These employers, often than not, are really inclined to hire athletes because athletes have those skills that I mentioned earlier that really translate to the workforce. However, most of the times, these employers don't even know that the athletes want these positions because athletes don't make the interest known. That's why it's so important and your responsibility for you to take those first couple steps so you can put yourself in the right position for everything else to happen naturally. Now, utilizing your resources does not just include the Career Center. It includes your coaches, your professors, administration, former teachers, and even the NCAA, which has a website called the FSA Career Center for athletes and employers to meet and apply for jobs. This is a great way, on top of all the other resources, to really put yourself in a position to succeed on things outside of your sports when it comes to a career. Thank you everyone for watching. I hope I really shared some valuable career advice for all my athletes out there. Please like and subscribe, and also comment down below anything that you want to see in terms of future videos from an athlete point of view. And as always, let's be a boss athlete.